You know that magical moment when you get the "your package has been delivered" notification, rush to the door like a kid on Christmas morning, and find absolutely nothing there? Not even a stray Amazon smile tape or a confused pigeon. Just air. That was my Tuesday morning. And let me tell you, it hit harder than my fourth cup of black coffee. Names Detective Sarah Martinez, Robbery Division, Metro PD, 12 years of service, an encyclopedic knowledge of criminal behavior, and a serious online shopping addiction I may or may not have under control. I'd recently moved into the charming hellscape of Willowbrook Heights. Picture Stepford with Wi-Fi. The lawns were so precisely edged I suspected someone measured grass height with a micrometer, and the houses looked cloned from a middle-class utopia starter pack. This was the kind of neighborhood where people had rules about mailbox font, where painting your shutters the wrong shade of beige could lead to an official letter and a passive-aggressive smile from your neighbor at the next block barbecue. Oh, and let's not forget the omnipresent force lurking in every suburban corner, the Homeowners Association, or as I've come to know them, suburbia's Sith Lords. Now, I didn't expect to get dropped into the middle of a crime ring when I moved in. I figured the worst I'd deal with was a neighbor yelling at me for having a non-HOA approved welcome mat. Spoiler, that also happened. But things got weird the moment my packages started vanishing. At first, I chalked it up to delivery issues. You know, the usual suspects: GPS errors, drivers in a rush, possibly raccoons with a taste for protein powder. The first to go missing was a book. Not the end of the world. Then some vitamins. Annoying, but I wasn't about to file a federal complaint. But by the time package number 4 disappeared, I began to get the distinct feeling the universe, or someone on my street, was screwing with me. But this Tuesday? Oh no, Tuesday was different. Tuesday, I was expecting a package that was neither cheap nor easily replaceable. A new tactical vest, specifically ordered for an upcoming department training. Custom fitted. 8 weeks delivery. Price tag somewhere between fancy espresso machine and questionable life decision. The kind of vest that says, yes, I know what I'm doing. Also, I have back problems. Tracking showed it was delivered at 2:47 p.m. Left at front door. Only problem? I was home all day, and I know my door. It saw no action, unless you count the squirrel who tried to break into my bird feeder. So there I was, standing barefoot on my porch, mug of rapidly cooling coffee in one hand, scanning the area like a hawk on a caffeine bender. No package. No sign of delivery. Just me, the wind, and a creeping suspicion that something was very off. That's when I saw him. Strutting down the sidewalk like he owned the pavement was a teenager, maybe 17, oozing smugness from every pore. The kind of smirk that usually only comes from cheating on a test and not getting caught, or realizing your mom runs the HOA. He had a package tucked under his arm, suspiciously rectangular, suspiciously sized, and suspiciously familiar. My eyes narrowed like Clint Eastwood in a spaghetti western. "Excuse me," I called, turning on my best friendly neighbor who totally doesn't suspect you of theft voice. "Did you happen to see any packages delivered to my house today?" He paused, turned, and oh dear reader, his smirk actually grew. Like I'd just asked if he'd seen my long-lost puppy, and he was contemplating whether to lie or double down on evil. "Packages?" he said, doing a stellar impression of a goldfish pretending to understand algebra. "Nah, haven't seen anything. Maybe they got delivered to the wrong house." "Sure. And maybe I'm secretly Beyoncé." He shrugged and kept walking, the suspiciously tactical vest-shaped package still under his arm, bouncing slightly as he went. "And I swear to all that is sacred in law enforcement," he winked at me. Not a friendly, hello neighbor wink. No, it was the kind of wink that says, yeah, I stole your stuff, and you can't do a thing about it. I was about to storm down the sidewalk, fueled by caffeine and righteous rage, when the gates of HOA hell opened. Her front door flung open 2 houses down. Honestly, it might have been a wind machine. I wouldn't be surprised. And out stepped a woman so aggressively HOA chic. She looked like a Pinterest board with a superiority complex. Blonde bob, pastel sweater set, clipboard clutched like it held the nuclear codes. "Tyler," she barked across the street. And oh yes, the smirk machine had a name. Tyler. Of course. The effect was immediate. Tyler morphed from teenage criminal mastermind to yes, mommy, in under 2 seconds. He trotted toward her like she was holding his allowance hostage. And just like that, I had my suspects. A teenage kleptomaniac and his clipboard-wielding suburban dragon mother. Naturally, I followed, smiling sweetly like I was delivering cookies, not contemplating evidence collection. Hi there. I'm Sarah, just moved in down the street. Was asking your son if he'd seen a package meant for me. The woman didn't even pretend to hide her disdain. She gave me a once-over that made me check if I'd accidentally worn pajamas. Spoiler, I hadn't. I'm Margaret Pemberton, she announced with the self-importance of someone declaring they invented fire. I'm the HOA president here in Willowbrook Heights. Of course you are, Margaret. Oh, wonderful. I've been meaning to attend one of your meetings, I lied cheerfully. Just curious if Tyler maybe noticed. My Tyler, she interrupted, her tone sharpened like the edge of a HOA violation form, would never be involved in anything improper. Perhaps your package was misdelivered. It happens. And if you're so concerned, perhaps consider installing a camera? Her smile was tight. Her eyes were steel. Her implication was loud and clear. You are new here. You are beneath me. Now run along, little woman. Absolutely, I replied, returning her smile with one that said, I already know your son's guilty, and I will enjoy proving it. Just wanted to check. Have a nice day. As I turned to walk back, Tyler threw one last glance over his shoulder, his smirk returning in full force, and whispered just loud enough for me to hear. Maybe keep better track of your stuff. Game freaking on. Let me tell you something about Margaret Pemberton. She didn't just walk around like she ran the neighborhood. She marched through it like she'd conquered it in battle. The woman had posture that said ex-military, style that screamed Pinterest mom with a vendetta, and an aura of superiority that made the Pope look humble. After our little interaction, I spent the evening Googling HOA bylaws while rage-sipping chamomile tea. Not because I feared Margaret's wrath. I've stared down armed suspects in alleyways. But because I was already planning how to dismantle her suburban empire, one passive-aggressive clipboard comment at a time. But first, recon. By Wednesday, I'd shifted into full detective mode, albeit in yoga pants and a hoodie, because off-duty does not mean off-theme. I didn't want to spook the locals with a badge. Yet, instead, I played the role of mildly nosy neighbor, which in Willowbrook Heights meant I was operating at standard community levels. It was during one of my very casual, totally not surveillance jogs that I started noticing patterns. For one, Tyler was always around. Not just teenager loitering around, but strategically loitering. He'd ride his bike in weird loops, hover near porches, glance down driveways like he was checking for security cameras. Frankly, if he'd put this much effort into school, he'd have cured cancer by now. I also started noticing that Margaret's daily HOA inspections, yes, those were a thing, were always conveniently scheduled during peak delivery hours. Amazon Prime, UPS, FedEx, it was like she had their schedules tattooed on the inside of her clipboard. It was a classic setup, Tyler playing the field scout, Margaret the air cover. One watching for packages, the other maintaining plausible deniability, and both oozing enough smugness to choke a cactus. I made my first tactical move that Friday. Dressed in my best just pulled weeds ensemble, old t-shirt, sweat, and a strategic smudge of dirt on the cheek, I walked over to Mrs. Chin's house, 3 doors down. Sweet lady. Retired. Grew herbs in mismatched pots on her porch and made cookies that could solve geopolitical conflicts. Hi, Mrs. Chun. I greeted, feigning casual curiosity. Have you had any issues with missing packages lately? She looked up from her watering can, sighed like she'd just been asked about her worst regret, and nodded. I ordered a set of Japanese knives for my daughter's wedding. They said delivered. Gone. I thought maybe porch pirates. I replied, biting my lip thoughtfully. Anyone else mention anything missing? By the end of the day, I had a running list that would make any DA start salivating. Power tools, electronics, baby items. Nothing outrageous on its own, but the frequency, the pattern? Oh, it painted a picture all right. And that picture had Tyler's smug little face right in the middle of it. Here's where it gets really good. Nearly every victim on that list had a recent HOA warning. Mrs. Chin's illegally tall fence. Mr. Rodriguez's garbage bins visible after pickup. The Johnsons? Unapproved tulips. Tulips, for heaven's sake. Margaret had literally declared war on flowers. Coincidence? Please. I've seen less suspicious connections on crime syndicate org charts. So, I did what any self-respecting detective with a grudge and a pile of circumstantial evidence would do. I escalated. Saturday morning. Operation Suburban Watchdog was go. I parked myself by the living room window with coffee, laptop, and binoculars, hidden, of course, behind a strategically placed fern. From my vantage point, I could see both my porch and most of the street. And I waited. Hugh Tyler. Around 1:45 p.m., he emerged from his house in what I can only describe as low-budget camouflage, dark hoodie, hands in pockets, doing that aimless teenager shuffle like he was bored out of his mind. But I could see the way he scanned every porch like he was playing real life. Where's Waldo? Except Waldo was your new iPad. At 2:16 p.m., jackpot. UPS rolled up to the Hendersons' house, newly moved in, friendly but clueless. The driver dropped a box, medium-sized, white shipping label, and drove off. Hugh Tyler, from stage left. He waited until the coast was clear, then strolled over like he was just curious, admiring the landscaping, having a philosophical crisis. Whatever it was, he casually bent down, grabbed the box, and tucked it under his hoodie like it was a half-eaten sandwich. Then, the audacity, he whistled as he walked away. Whistled. Like he'd just saved a cat from a tree or delivered a baby in the back seat of a Honda. I nearly cracked my mug. Ladies and gentlemen, I had visual confirmation. The punk was stealing packages in broad daylight, armed only with that grin and his mother's iron dome of HOA authority. I recorded the whole thing, of course. Discrete camera in the window, high-definition clarity, timestamp and all. I even got a bonus cameo of Margaret pruning her roses across the street, absolutely ignoring her son's suburban crime spree. By Sunday, I had enough circumstantial evidence to host a PowerPoint night at the precinct. But I wasn't calling it in just yet. Why? Because I was going to make this personal. I wanted them to know they were caught. I wanted to watch the expressions drain from their self-righteous faces like someone had pulled the plug on their superiority complex. They thought I was just another new neighbor with no clue how things worked here. They were wrong. Very, very wrong. There's something deeply satisfying about watching a criminal out themselves in slow motion. Tyler and Margaret thought they were running the show, one clipboard swing at a time, but I was already 10 moves ahead and 2 emotional breakdowns past caring what they thought of me. By Monday, I had a folder labeled Operation Porch Pirate, filled with timestamps, photos, and statements from at least 6 neighbors who'd either lost packages or had Margaret breathing down their necks over violations that would make Kafka proud. One neighbor got a warning for unauthorized garden gnomes. Gnomes, people. Lawn decor had become a crime under Margaret's reign. But hey, no big deal. Just HOA things, right? I spent that week tightening the noose, metaphorically speaking. And by that, I mean I baked cookies and handed them out while fishing for intel. Nothing gets people talking like warm chocolate chip bribery. Also, I needed to know how deep Margaret's HOA claws had sunk into this neighborhood. Turns out, pretty deep. Margaret fined me $50 for leaving a garden hose visible from the street, said Mr. Simmons, eyes twitching slightly. She said my patio umbrella was too vibrant. Another whispered, like the umbrella might hear us. It wasn't just paranoia. Margaret ruled like a pastel dictator. And her son? Well, Tyler was her unlicensed enforcement arm. Only instead of citations, he handed out theft and smug looks. I noticed a pattern. Tyler didn't just steal randomly, he targeted. Always from homes Margaret had flagged. It was like their family dinner conversations included, did Mrs. Chun trim that hedge, and add her to the package list. That's when I realized, this wasn't just a teenager getting bold. It was organized. Margaret, maybe not directly giving orders, but definitely laying out the hit list. Tyler just followed through, and probably pocketed some resale cash on the side. So what did I do? I leveled up. Time to go from amateur sleuth to full tactical prepper. I installed a real security system, motion-activated cameras, doorbell cam, sensors, the works. HOA regulations be damned. If Margaret wanted to complain, she could fill out Form Go to hell. A42. I even angled one camera at my neighbor's porch across the street, purely by accident, of course. On Thursday, I got lucky. Not only did Tyler try to snag a small Amazon package from the corner house and fail, thanks to a surprise barking poodle, but he made the rookie mistake of checking if my house had anything worth lifting. He hovered by my porch, peeking under the mat like I'd stashed a PS5 there, and then turned away empty-handed, looking vaguely insulted. Guess I wasn't on the day's loot list. But I got it all on video, down to the way he scanned the porch cam, saw the red light, and muttered crap under his breath. Boom. Consciousness of surveillance. Add that to the list. But the crown jewel of the week? Friday. 2 new packages arrived. One for me, printer ink, thrilling, and one for the Duncans across the street. Tyler walked by around 3 p.m., zeroed in on the Duncans box, and did a full U-turn. He sauntered up, grabbed it like it owed him money, and, I kid you not, tucked it into his hoodie like he was shoplifting candy bars. He walked right back toward his house. And then, the piece de resistance. He waved at me. I was standing in my front yard watering a completely dead plant. Don't judge me. It was a prop, and he waved. Like we were buddies. Like he wasn't a living felony in sneakers. I waved back. With a smile so sweet, I think I gave myself a cavity. I had him on camera. I had the timing. I had witnesses. All I needed now was the dramatic confrontation. Because you don't just quietly report someone like Margaret Pemberton and her criminal prodigy. Oh no. You serve justice with a side of humiliation and a dessert cart of poetic irony. So I planned the setup. Saturday mornings, Margaret always did her inspections, a little HOA safari, clipboard in hand, eyes scanning for rogue flags or rebellious lawn edges. She wore a wide-brimmed sun hat and carried herself like a suburban Terminator. That Saturday, I made sure to be outside, strategically sipping coffee in my porch chair while she made her rounds. Morning, Margaret, I chirped. Beautiful day for neighborhood crime prevention, huh? She looked up, gave a tight smile that could have sliced deli meat, and replied, as long as everyone follows the rules, yes. Oh, I agree, I said, feigning innocence with the precision of a stage actor. Speaking of which, I wanted to thank you. Her expression cracked. Margaret wasn't used to gratitude. Suspicion flickered across her face like a glitch in the Matrix. Thank me. For the advice about cameras, I continued. Turns out you were right. They've been very helpful. You won't believe what I've seen this week. Now she was pale. Like just saw a ghost pale. The kind of pale that says, I know exactly what you've seen. Her fingers tightened on the clipboard. Her eyes narrowed. What exactly have you seen? Oh, just some interesting foot traffic near porches, I said, leaning in. Someone even tried to lift a box from mine. Good thing I installed high-def cameras, huh? Margaret didn't respond. I saw the moment her brain calculated all the ways this could implode and came up empty. Behind her, Tyler appeared like a teenage Sith apprentice summoned by dark energy, or, more accurately, by the realization his mom's poker face was faltering. Hey, what's going on? He asked, eyes flicking between us. I smiled wide. Oh, perfect timing. I was just telling your mom about the package thief I caught on camera. Thought you might have seen something too. Tyler froze. Not visibly, but I know panic when I see it. His voice cracked just slightly. Nah, I haven't seen anything. Weird though. I stared at him. Yeah, very weird. Almost like the thief knew which houses weren't using cameras. The tension in the air was so thick it could have been used as insulation. Margaret opened her mouth, probably to deliver another line of bureaucratic dismissal, but I cut her off. Anyway, I said sweetly, I'm planning to report everything to the police on Monday. I've got footage, timestamps, victim statements, the whole 9 yards. Should be an easy case to make. I might as well have set off a firecracker in Margaret's clipboard. You can't just install unauthorized surveillance devices, she snapped. There are HOA protocols. You need board approval. Oh, I'm sure the board will understand, I said, sipping my coffee. After all, we're trying to stop a crime spree. And if they don't, I'm happy to submit all my evidence, along with a formal request to review leadership practices in the HOA. The color drained from both their faces now. Margaret's fingers gripped the clipboard so hard, I half expected her to snap it in half. Tyler looked like he was contemplating a career in disappearing acts. I let the silence hang. Then I gave them a wink, the exact kind Tyler had given me when this all started. Checkmate was coming. They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. But those people clearly never met an HOA president being slowly cornered by hard evidence and polite sarcasm. Margaret Pemberton wasn't just angry, she was vibrating. If her pressed khakis weren't holding her together, I suspect she would have turned into a swarm of aggressive post-it notes and HOA memos. After our little porch-side chat, I gave them space. Let the paranoia simmer. Let the whispers start. By Sunday afternoon, the air in Willowbrook Heights was thick with unspoken tension and the smell of overwatered lawns. Neighbors had started waving to me more often, some curious, some clearly siding with whoever seemed more likely to take down the clipboard queen. Word spreads fast when the president's kid might be a serial package thief. Then came Monday, the day Margaret lost the plot entirely. She showed up on my porch at exactly 9:01 a.m., clipboard in hand, lips pressed so tightly together I thought she might be holding in a scream or a small demon. "Good morning," I said sweetly, opening the door before she could even knock. "Coffee?" "No." She stepped forward, tone clipped. "We need to talk." Of course we did. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and folded my arms. "About Tyler?" Her jaw clenched. "About your behavior." "Oh good. We were doing this. You've been making unsubstantiated accusations against my son. That is harassment. You've told neighbors he's involved in theft, and you're spreading paranoia." I raised an eyebrow. "I haven't accused anyone. I've just informed people that a thief has been operating in the neighborhood, and that I'm working with law enforcement. Which is, you know, true. Don't play games with me," she snapped, the mask slipping fast. "You're new here. You don't understand how things work." "Actually," I said, smiling like I was about to sell her an extended warranty she didn't want, "I think I understand perfectly." Just then, as if on cue, Tyler wandered into the yard. Hoodie up, hands in pockets, face set in that signature, "I'm too cool to care," expression he probably practiced in the mirror. He saw me and froze, his eyes darting to his mom like she was supposed to handle this. She did her best. "My son has done nothing wrong," she said, raising her voice just enough for the universe to hear. "And unless you have actual proof, you need to stop this witch hunt." "Funny," I said, pulling out my phone. "You should mention proof." And I hit play. The video I'd queued up was clear as day. Tyler casually walking onto the Hendersons' porch, scooping up a package, and walking off whistling like he was starring in a musical about petty theft. Margaret made a sound. It wasn't quite a gasp, more like the air getting punched out of her entitlement. "Tyler?" He turned whiter than the HOA-approved paint palette. "Where did you get that?" Margaret whispered. "I told you I installed cameras." I looked her dead in the eye. "And unlike your son, I did it legally." Tyler stepped back, muttering something under his breath. Margaret, to her credit, tried one last Hail Mary. This is entrapment. You're setting us up." "Oh, Margaret," I said, laughing. "Entrapment requires me to encourage a crime. Your son's just dumb enough to commit one while being filmed." "I want that footage deleted," she snapped. "Not gonna happen. Already backed up to the cloud. And, fun fact, 3 other neighbors have handed me their doorbell cam footage too. Want to guess who's in those?" Silence. Then Tyler decided to dig his own grave. "This is insane. Everyone orders too much crap anyway. I was just taking stuff no one really needed. It's not like I was breaking into houses." Margaret spun toward him, aghast. "Tyler." "Oh, please," I said, eyes gleaming. "Go on, Tyler. Tell your mom how long you've been doing it." "Or should I?" His mouth opened. Closed. A full fish out of water moment. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to get caught," I corrected. "And now that you have, it's time for the adult part of this story." Margaret was shaking. Literally shaking. Her grip on the clipboard was so tight, I thought she might use it as a weapon. Then she straightened, pulled herself together, and said the most Margaret thing imaginable. I will report you to the HOA for unauthorized surveillance and harassment. I couldn't help it. I laughed. Full, loud, soul-cleansing laughter. Margaret, I am the surveillance. And in case you forgot, I'm Detective Sarah Martinez. Robbery Division. 12 years on the force. What you call harassment, I call an ongoing investigation. Tyler staggered back a step. Wait, you're a cop. Detective, I corrected. And you just confessed. On camera. In front of a law enforcement officer. His knees actually buckled. Margaret's face turned a shade of gray that made me worry, for a moment, that I might have to call a medic. But she rallied. Barely. This is still a private matter, she said weakly. This can be handled internally. Nope, I said cheerfully. Because see, when your son stole my tactical vest, he committed a felony. Theft of law enforcement equipment? Yeah, that's not an internal HOA issue. That's a see you in court situation. Sirens wailed in the distance. Backup was on the way. I'd called in the cavalry before stepping outside, because I like my takedowns dramatic and well-timed. You called the cops? Margaret asked, voice rising. I am the cops. The look on her face? Worth every stolen package. By the time the police cruisers pulled up to the curb, the atmosphere on my porch had morphed from heated neighborly disagreement to suburban soap opera meets court procedural. Margaret looked like she was about to launch herself into orbit, and Tyler? Let's just say his hoodie had officially lost its protective powers. Officer Kim and Detective Rodriguez stepped out of the first cruiser. They were two of the best, sharp, level-headed, and, most importantly, they knew me. Rodriguez gave me a nod that said, "You owe me lunch for this," and I mentally added him to the list of people getting Christmas cookies this year. Morning, Sarah, Rodriguez said, clipboard in hand. We hear you've got a package thief for us. Margaret practically lunged forward. This is a mistake. This is a huge misunderstanding. My son hasn't done anything wrong. Rodriguez didn't blink. Ma'am, we'll be the judge of that. Let's start with the facts. Detective Martinez. I handed him my phone, already open to the video reel. Footage from my cameras, plus 4 statements from neighbors. They've either lost packages or have footage of similar incidents involving the same suspect. Kim turned to Tyler. Mind stepping over here for a minute? We just want to ask you a few questions. Tyler hesitated, looked to his mother like she could magically delete reality, then shuffled toward the officer. It was the most pitiful power walk I've ever seen. Equal parts fake chill and genuine pants-wetting fear. I want a lawyer, he muttered, as Kim began to speak. Margaret turned to me, eyes wild. You set us up. You waited. You planned this. Correct, I replied calmly. Because your son's been running a theft operation in plain sight, and you've been enabling him, intentionally or not. Now, let's not pretend you didn't know what was happening. Her voice trembled with fury and fear. I am the president of the HOA. I've spent 15 years building this community. And your son has spent the last 8 months robbing it, I said, arms crossed. Karma works fast when you're sloppy. Margaret's veneer finally cracked. All that HOA polish, all those years of wielding petty power like a sword, it crumbled. Do you know how much I've sacrificed to keep this place perfect? And now you come in and ruin it all. I didn't ruin anything, I said. Your son did. You just looked the other way and called it leadership. She opened her mouth to retort, but stopped, mid-breath, as 2 more officers emerged from the second cruiser with a warrant. Detective Rodriguez had already filed it earlier in the week, based on my footage and neighbor testimony. I had told him to hold until we had something irrefutable. Guess what? We had something irrefutable. We have a signed search warrant, Rodriguez announced, loud enough for the growing crowd of rubbernecking neighbors to hear. For the Pemberton residence and garage. You could have heard a pin drop. Or a clipboard crack in 2. No, you can't just come into my house. Margaret shrieked, hands raised like she was casting a spell of HOA protection. Ma'am, Kim said firmly, this is now an active investigation. You can either cooperate or we'll detain you for obstruction. I'll call my lawyer, she snapped. Do that, Rodriguez replied. But in the meantime, please step aside. As they moved past her, Margaret didn't speak. She just stood there, rigid, pale, shaking with rage. Tyler, meanwhile, looked like he might faint. For someone who'd strutted around like a bargain bin mob boss, he was astonishingly unprepared for the consequences part of the equation. 30 minutes later, Officer Kim emerged from the garage holding a large plastic bin. "Sarah," he called, "you're going to want to see this." Inside, a veritable museum of suburban larceny. Kitchen knives, power tools, unopened Amazon boxes, baby monitors, even my missing tactical vest, stuffed neatly beneath a box of protein powder like it was no big deal. Rodriguez whistled. "Looks like we've got ourselves a pattern." Tyler sat on the curb, head in hands. Margaret paced like she was trying to wear a hole in her HOA-approved sidewalk. Neighbors were everywhere now. Quiet murmurs, pointed looks. For a woman who once wrote a 7-page notice about mailbox height violations, this was about as public a downfall as it gets. "I didn't tell him to do this," she finally said, turning toward me. "Maybe not directly," I replied, "but he followed your lead. He used your violation lists, your enforcement routes. He targeted the people you flagged." "I never said steal." "No," I said, "but you said they didn't belong, that they were lowering the neighborhood's standards." And he listened. She looked at me, eyes glassy. Not with tears. No, Margaret didn't cry. This was a woman watching her perfectly curated empire collapse like a folding chair under a grudge. "You think this neighborhood will thank you?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "They'll turn on you, too. You'll be an outsider again." "Margaret," I said, "I'd rather be an outsider with integrity than a queen of this HOA fiefdom built on intimidation and denial." Rodriguez approached with a clipboard, his clipboard, not hers, and handed her a notice. "You're officially suspended from your role as HOA president pending the investigation. The board will be notified. Expect formal communication." She didn't respond, just clutched her now symbolic clipboard like it might absorb her into another dimension. As the officers packed up evidence, neighbors began to quietly disperse. No one said a word to Margaret. No one offered comfort. Just a few nods in my direction, and one guy, Mr. Rodriguez, no relation, raised a beer can in silent salute. I stood there, the late morning sun warm on my face, watching as Tyler was led into the back of a cruiser, the neighborhood's reigning Karen left alone on her porch with nothing but regrets and garden regulations. Justice hadn't just been served. It had been plated on HOA letterhead and garnished with poetic irony. And the best part? I wasn't done yet. There's something electric about the moment when truth isn't just whispered in shadows. It's broadcasted like a halftime show. And in Willowbrook Heights, the fall of Margaret Pemberton was shaping up to be a Super Bowl-level spectacle. Once Tyler was comfortably seated in the back of the patrol car, hands cuffed, ego shattered, the real work began. Detective Rodriguez stayed behind with me as Officer Kim and the others processed the evidence. This wasn't just a teenage kleptomaniac getting busted for porch piracy. Oh no, this was the beginning of a case with legs. Serious legs. "Didn't expect this to be so organized," Rodriguez muttered as we reviewed the list of recovered items. "Usually it's just one-off grab-and-go junk." "Well," I said, "you don't get this kind of consistency unless there's a spreadsheet involved." He gave me a look. "You're kidding." "Nope." I pulled out the second gem of the morning, a printed list I'd found neatly taped to a clipboard in Margaret's garage. It was labeled Current HOA Violations, Tier 1, and next to each entry, a series of check marks. "Margaret's been giving Tyler a cheat sheet," I said, handing it over. "Every neighbor who got flagged for something stupid, unapproved patio chairs, lawn gnome insurrections, what have you, ended up on this list. And guess what? Those same people lost packages shortly after." Rodriguez whistled again. "So not only are they running a theft operation, it's targeted, systemic, might even qualify for enhanced charges under organized retail crime statutes." I nodded. "Plus, he's been selling some of the items online." I cross-checked with a resale account on a local app. Same zip code. Photos taken in a garage that looks suspiciously like theirs. "I've got screenshots." Rodriguez smiled at me. "Remind me never to steal your parking spot." Meanwhile, Margaret was sitting on the edge of her porch like the disgraced CEO of a failing lifestyle brand. The clipboard was gone. The power stance was gone. Even the hair, once aggressively blown out to perfection, was starting to frizz in the humidity. I walked over, not to rub it in. Okay, maybe just a little, but to deliver one last piece of news. Margaret, I said, voice calm but clear, there's something you should know. She looked up slowly. Her expression was a mix of exhaustion and pure loathing. I suppose you're going to say I told you so. I shook my head. Nope. I'm just here to inform you that in addition to criminal charges, you and your son are about to be hit with a civil suit. Her face twitched. From who? Everyone he stole from, I said. And the HOA board. She blinked. I am the board. Not anymore, I said gently. While you were watching your world implode, a few of your neighbors called an emergency meeting. Voted you out. Apparently, even they draw the line at organized crime. Revolutionary, I know. She opened her mouth, closed it again. There was nothing left to say. I let the silence hang, then added. Also, in case you're curious, the mayor's office called. Apparently, Captain Morrison forwarded them the incident report. They're considering a broader investigation into how your HOA was run. Financial audit included. That did it. Her entire body sagged, like a deflated pool float. This was all supposed to be mine, she whispered. This community. This order. You confused control with leadership, I replied. And now you're going to find out what it feels like to be on the other end of one of your own letters. I turned to walk away, but her voice stopped me. Why? She asked, genuinely bewildered. Why go through all this trouble? Why not just move away like the others? I looked back at her. Because I don't run from problems, I solve them. And because people like you count on silence. You use rules to bully people into submission. But rules without justice? That's not a community. It's a dictatorship. She didn't respond. Just stared off into the distance, where her white picket empire used to be. Back at the curb, the final inventory was being logged. Tyler's loot stash was shockingly diverse. Electronics, home decor, several unopened beauty kits, which raised questions I chose not to explore. Even a batch of baby formula, presumably taken because Karma needed one more reason to slap him harder. As I signed off on the report and handed over my footage drives, Officer Kim gave me a nod of respect. You ever consider working community crimes full-time? I like robbery too much, I replied. But I'll swing by your next neighborhood watch meeting. We both laughed. The rest of the day passed in a kind of surreal daze. Neighbors stopped by to say thank you. Mrs. Chun brought dumplings and insisted on giving me a plant I will undoubtedly kill. Mr. Simmons offered to repaint my porch on the house. And that evening, as the sun set over Willowbrook's now scandalized cul-de-sacs, I poured myself a glass of wine, put my feet up, and smiled. Because justice wasn't just served, it had been home-delivered. With tracking and signature confirmation. You know what's better than justice? Justice with flair. Justice where the bad guys don't just lose, they unravel. Publicly. Dramatically. With an audience of the very people they tried to control. Over the next few weeks, Willowbrook Heights transformed. It was like someone lifted a smothering blanket off the neighborhood, and everyone realized they could breathe again. Lawn chairs of rebellious colors appeared. Garden gnomes returned in full force, standing proudly on lawns like tiny ceramic revolutionaries. And Margaret Pemberton? She became the local ghost story parents told their kids to scare them into obeying sprinkler rules. Tyler's legal situation? Oh, it escalated. Once the stolen items were cataloged and the resale history was connected to his anonymous seller profiles, the DA's office moved fast. Turns out, when a miner steals thousands in merchandise, stores it in a garage that might as well have had a neon sign reading "Crime Stash Here," and sells it across state lines? That's organized retail crime, baby. Juvenile court wasn't thrilled. Neither were the dozens of neighbors now lining up to press charges or file for restitution. You'd think the community might feel sorry for the kid. Maybe someone would say, he's just a teenager, he didn't know better. But no. Tyler had earned that contempt fair and square. It wasn't just what he stole, it was how he grinned while doing it. And the best part? He cracked. Completely. Second day in detention, he gave a full confession to investigators. Every detail, how he tracked deliveries, what he did with the packages, and, surprise, how Margaret gave him indirect encouragement by pointing out which neighbors were hurting the aesthetic value of Willowbrook. She might not have said, "Go steal their baby monitors," but she might as well have handed him a shopping list and a map. The confession put Margaret squarely in the legal hot seat. The HOA board unanimously voted to press charges for misuse of authority and reckless endangerment. Turns out, when you let your kid run a theft operation based on your own violation records, you don't just lose your position. You might lose your savings to civil lawsuits, too. By month's end, Margaret was facing 3 separate lawsuits. One from the HOA, one from a collective group of victims, and one from the local government for obstruction during an active investigation. Her lawyer tried the usual tricks: blame the system, claim ignorance, point fingers at a stressful home life. But it all fell apart when footage surfaced of her berating one neighbor for having non-regulation patio lighting the same day their package was stolen. She might as well have signed her own indictment in glitter pen. Her final move? She tried to sell her house and quietly leave the state. The HOA board blocked the sale until the lawsuits were resolved. That meant Margaret, former queen of the clipboards, had to remain in the very neighborhood where she used to wield power like a petty suburban monarch, now as a pariah. I'd see her sometimes, walking her dog, head down, no eye contact, no clipboard. She stopped carrying it, by the way, after everything. I think she realized it had become less of a badge of honor and more of a community warning sign. Here walks a tyrant. Proceed with caution. And Tyler? The court sentenced him to a juvenile program with strict restitution requirements and community service. Irony struck hard. His first assigned project? Helping neighbors repair mailboxes and porch lighting damage during package thefts. He spent the summer mowing lawns, repainting curbs, and fixing fences under the watchful eye of the very people he used to steal from. And while I can't say he became a new person overnight, there was one moment, just one, that gave me pause. About 3 months after the bust, I got a small, unmarked package on my porch. Inside, my tactical vest, perfectly repackaged. A handwritten note. Detective Martinez. I was a jerk. I thought I was getting away with it. I didn't care who I hurt. But this scared me straight. I'm paying everyone back, including you. Sorry for thinking you were just another nosy neighbor. Tyler. There was a check inside for the full cost of the vest. And the signature looked shaky, like it had been written by someone with something to prove. I kept the note, filed it next to my department commendation for exemplary off-duty investigative work. Because let's be honest, how many people get a thank you card from the teenage criminal they exposed? And as for Willowbrook Heights, with Margaret gone and the board restructured, the neighborhood actually got better. People smiled more. Meetings had snacks. Rules were still there, but now they were guidelines, not cudgels. The new HOA president, Nancy, a sweet woman who wore Crocs and baked banana bread, even removed half the outdated regulations and encouraged community input. Imagine that. Democracy in the suburbs. Who knew? So no, I didn't move. I stayed. Because once you fight off a Karen-led regime and dismantle a crime ring with your day-off hobby cam setup, you sort of earn your place. Now when I get a package, I know it'll be there when I open the door. But more importantly, now the neighborhood knows exactly what happens when you mess with a detective's Amazon order. Spoiler, you lose. With sirens, and witnesses, and a clipboard snapped in half on your own lawn. Justice doesn't always wear a badge. But sometimes, she drinks her coffee on the porch and smiles as karma does the rest. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.